Connor, I think it's going to be necessary to label this one Nerd Files just based on the nerd credentials of the guest. We've
Yeah,
made that
I
over and
think we
over
can.
again, but
I think we could meet that threshold.
okay, that's good. Nerd Files episode with Ultimate Nerd, Connor Green. Everyone knows Connor because we've talked before, and he's a little bit of a rock star in the ski industry. You won't deny that, right?
Your words, not mine.
Good. It's not that often that we get a complete redesign of skis from a company and the opportunity to have a conversation with a guy who did the whole thing, proved out the concepts, tested the material, was in charge of retooling the equipment and production. A lot of ski companies are so big that this is multi-layer, many people, engineers, and drawing boards, and then people whose job it is to make the whole thing happen. At Madshus, this this is the guy right here. Connor, as we were just discussing, is 3D printing parts for the carousel to make adjustments in production. It's pretty cool because it's a kind of a one-stop shop to get inside the ski and figure out what's happening. So Madshus, as we have discussed, has a new model hitting the ground this winter. It did see race time last year and was being adopted pretty rapidly in the context of what we come to expect from companies bringing new skis to the snow. It's been much awaited. Connor and I have talked about these skis for a long time. And so for me, it feels like this is really taken a long time. But in truth, it's only been 2, 3 years that you've been working in this direction. Is that right?
Yeah, it comes slowly and then all at once.
Yeah.
And I want to stop you real quick, and because you mentioned that it's one new model, it's actually many new models. It's not just the Redline, it's the Race Pro and the Race Speed collections as well.
Okay.
So it was an even bigger change than you initially led with.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I
but
focus
yes.
on race product because
Mhm,
that's our world.
mhm.
But it is what did you guys retool everything because changing up the production meant that it only made sense to try to change the production methodology across the line? Or
It
was it
was essentially a requirement. So we wanted to make changes that were on the level that the entire molding line, parts needed to be swapped out, materials needed to be swapped out. And so it was a requirement that all of our carbon skis, which is Redline, Race Pro, Race Speed, all of those needed to have the same update cycle. In the previous years, those were offset. So we would update Redline in 1 year, and then the next year we would do Race Pro and Race Speed, which admittedly helps to kind of spread out the development, and you don't have all of the new products coming all at once. You can kind of work through problems that arise in the development cycle a bit more slowly because again, you're spreading over a longer period of time. But to achieve what we wanted to do and to make the changes we wanted to make, it was a complete requirement that we let the Race Pro and the Race Speed live a 3-year development cycle, the previous generation, so that we could synchronize them with the Redline. So it's the entire carbon molding carousel, molding line that's being updated.
okay, cool. So we're gonna pretend that we're focusing only on Redline because that's what I
Yes,
talk
absolutely.
about. But it's a big project then.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm gonna lead with a question as I prompted you via email earlier
Mhm.
about why. I mean, you guys worked for a long time on the development of Redline 3.0. You joined the company kind of in the 2.0 cycle and brought in the additional laminations that made the 3.0 a super successful ski. You then
Mhm.
pushed hard on refining cambers to make it successful ski at a World Cup level. And I say you, but also you've got a race department there helping to drive this process. It's a bunch of people working, Svein Ivar and you working together in development.
Mhm.
So that 3.0 model hit a really high mark, and it really, in many ways, put Madshus at risk of sounding down on where Madshus was previously. It put him back at the forefront and on par with the very best skis on the World Cup, and started to attract racers based on the quality of the skis, which is fantastic. So then the very next thing that happens is a complete redesign. You achieve a high level, and now it's time to redesign everything. Why? What were you setting out to do here?
So I'm sure we could have pushed that design philosophy, that production methodology a bit further for sure. But ultimately there was underlying weaknesses in the way we made skis that we couldn't solve, or we couldn't eliminate those deficiencies without having that bigger redesign. One particular weakness that we wanted to address was the edges of the skis. I mean, no cross-country ski is going to be as durable as an alpine ski that has a steel edge, but that was a weakness that we had identified in our skis, that they didn't hold up as well as we would have liked on the icier conditions, or if you hit a rock, there was a higher level of damage than we would like to accept. So that was one of the kind of overarching goals, is making more durable ski. We also wanted to reduce the weight of our skis. There was quite a bit of weight left on the table in the previous design, and making a few design tweaks, we were able to reduce that quite a lot, and making a stronger ski. So lighter, stronger, more durable was really kind of the perfect trifecta, and doing the combination of those three things required larger changes than an iterative approach. And you kept mentioning the Redline 3.0, and actually the current Redline is just Redline. The Redline 3.0 came in 2020, and then 2022 we just dropped the numbers.
Okay.
But it was essentially the same ski.
It was the same.
That's why,
yeah.
Yes. And so that was really key to making this whole project work, because if the 3.0 and then the later Redline were not as kind of stable, consistent, successful as they were, we never would have had the freedom and the time to be able to think 10 steps ahead.
Right.
So the stability and the consistency of the level of that product was actually what really bought us the time to be able to think bigger and be able to think where we can really push the limits in the future.
Yep. Okay, so staying on script here, because I think you addressed that question really well. Did you go about this with new materials or methods of assembling similar materials? What changed? I mean, what was the big change?
All of the above. So sometimes when you swap a material, it's very much take something out and put something in. You know, the formats are the same, the compatibility is very the same. And then other times you're swapping a material that necessitates, more fundamental changes in the way you're working with the product. To specifically delve deeper into the reinforced edges that I mentioned earlier. Yes.
Let's see if I can get it close enough to the screen to get a look here.
In post, you'll put some macro pictures.
There you go. You can sort of see it.
A little bit. So essentially, like at a fundamental level, if you want stronger edges, you need to reinforce the edge. It sounds so obvious that it's not even worth mentioning, but when you get down to it, either you need to put more of the same material or a stronger material at that point. More of the same material would have, of course, been the easier solution, but we found that it was a much better solution to choose actually a much stronger material that actually comes out from the sidewall to the ski base. So you're actually reinforcing that edge at the point of where the two meet each other.
Oh, okay. Because earlier on, it was basically just essentially the epoxy that was holding the skis together that you were working
on. There was some non-woven fabric, kind of surfacing down materials that did provide some strength, but compared to the woven material that's currently at that point, it's night and day how much stronger it is. Okay. Of course, making that change, it presents other design challenges. If we had simply put that material in the previous mold geometry, the surface quality along the edge would have been horrible because we didn't account for the additional thickness and the additional rigidity of that material at that point. So by adding a stronger material, we necessitated a change to the edge geometry, which also necessitates completely new molds. And so one thing kind of builds on the other, and you end up with kind of a laundry list of changes, all because you wanted to get one result. But it's a very interconnected kind of web of design decisions and kind of the flow from one to the next and how we solve them. It wasn't a clear roadmap at the beginning, but you solve each of the design problems as they arise or one by one. You kind of have a tree of which path along that you're going to take, and it was just a matter of finding the right development path that solved all of the issues and the needs, satisfied the needs that we wanted.
Right. So to be clear, this isn't like an entirely new and different construction methodology. It's the same factory, it's the same milling process, it's the same basic assembly into the carousel, the same molding process, different molds inside the same carousel. there are different steps along the way, but it's not like, all of a sudden the factory changed into a different factory and you're making skis in a totally different way, right?
No, it's the same factory, but with that said, I don't think there's aside from graphics, there's not many, not even graphics. There aren't many specific stations that haven't had some change.
Okay.
The degree of change varies. It might be as simple as adjusting the cutouts in where the graphic position, like the graphic registration pins go, registration cutouts go, but pretty much every station has had some kind of update to, in some cases, accommodate the changes. And then in other cases, looking at this as a fresh start and going over everything with a fine tooth comb. And some of them are changes that should have been done years ago. And it's just now that we're going through and looking at every single thing that we make the change. But there have been tweaks pretty much all along the process.
So one of the most visible things about the skis that's different is that the profile is now flat, not
Yep.
doesn't have the 3 dimensions on it. Was that something you set out to build into the new ski, or is that a result of what's the change? Why were the skis? What was the shape about to start with, and what resulted in this?
So the 3D geometry, as we called it before, wasn't without any purpose. I think the specific designs that were used were very much about visual, graphical interest, making a nice looking product. Yeah, in large part cosmetic. Having some degree of kind of ridges and channels does serve to provide a reservoir where excess epoxy can kind of drain into.
Okay.
So it helps some degree of unevenness in the surface can help in that way. However, the molding method that we were using was probably 4 decades old, and the quality of epoxy sizing for fibers. So sizing is like a chemical coating that's put on the outside. It's like a bath of chemicals that you put on the outside of carbon, glass, or whatever kind of fiber you're impregnating. And it helps to bond the epoxy to the fibers. So sizing is one area where the technology has come on in leaps and bounds. And the quality of what you can get now compared to 30, 40 years ago is much better. And so the need for those kinds of excess channels is quite reduced.
Okay.
And so
modernization of materials kind of eliminated
a lot of that, yeah. And so it just made much more sense to go with a completely flat top surface. And now like the main focus is really about getting as solid, as consistent compression as you can across the whole length of the ski. Because essentially you have a core materials on the outside with impregnated with epoxy, and then you squeeze it all together in a press. And the more consistent that pressure is, the more consistent the epoxy distribution and the fiber to resin ratio. And these are all things that impact the camber of the ski, for example. So the more consistency you can get in the molding process, the more consistent the end product will be.
I remember last time we were over there, maybe it was a couple trips ago, when you were first producing the first viable prototypes, you were super excited just about the quality of the object. Like you were doing the drop test onto concrete. Of course, you're like,
it was just such a satisfying kind of thud. There was no, it was such a solid object that would reverberate. You could hear the difference.
Right.
And that was in large part due to the fact that, there weren't all those kind of reservoirs that epoxy could flow into. And it was just a very solid, compact object, compact
as
ski.
an object, you've eliminated voids, you've got integrity in the ski at a level that wasn't there before. When we first tested the skis, it was spring of 23, I guess. In May, we were on the last snow. And it was the earliest prototypes that Svein Ivar had been skiing on. And we also took some good Redline skis out, production skis from race department. And the difference in stability on that chunky, horrendous, really poorly groomed May snow up at Pelistova was remarkable. The new ski just was so settled, and it felt really highly damped and really adaptable to the snow surface. It tracked it really well, and yet it was also really alive. And do you think that has more to do with the material selection, or that compaction and elimination of voids? What's your sense of where that performance comes from?
I think the compaction helps a lot. I'm probably more excited about the consistency because my one of the things I'm always kind of working towards or striving towards is maintaining or making sure that Madshus has a consistent level of quality, whether you buy a ski today, tomorrow, next year. If you buy the same ski, and this is kind of more from the perspective of a ski shop rather than a ski consumer, but I want them to know what they're going to get. I don't
Yeah.
want there to be surprises. And so any place we can introduce consistency into the process and the end product is will result in an improved product for the end consumer.
So this isn't just trying to make a faster ski at a elite racing level. This is trying to make a better product across the line in terms of consistency,
Yeah, yeah,
reproducibility,
yeah,
and strength, weight, overall
yeah.
quality. Oh, that's a good set of goals. So one of the questions that drives me nuts, one of the comments that I get in my position interacting with the public about skis is this sort of frustration with the ski industry not being able to reproduce things exactly. And there are certain consumers out there that are so angry at the fact that I have a job trying to select really good skis. And maybe I'm overhyping the difference between the best skis and the not best skis and differentiating between quality and fit factors and everything
Mhm.
else. For sure, the industry is always trying to make skis that are more versatile, fit a wider range of skiers and conditions, and are more universal because that's the goal at all levels, including elite racing. And yet, we're always still looking for that magic pair, and people lose their minds about the fact that the skis can't just be stamped out with total consistency and reproducibility. And my answer is always, you can't imagine how small the changes in camber are that result in really distinctive changes of performance on the snow because you have this material set that we've been discussing and it has to be rendered into a camber or a shape that really determines how it expresses against the snow and what the relationship between the ski and the snow, how it handles energy and everything else is, what the length of the contact zones are and everything else. These changes in camber height of tenths or even hundredths of a millimeter do end up making a difference. So my question is this: if money and time, production time, were no object at all, could you make and totally reproduce a perfect ski, and how much better could it be? Like if you could do anything technologically to make a ski, what, like, would it be way lighter? Could you make it faster? Could you make it like totally precisely on purpose and reproduce it?
Yeah. So I think the question has multiple elements, obviously. And the first of it refers to reproducibility. Every single manufacturing process in the world has tolerances, has deviation. So can I absolutely reproduce two skis? No, absolutely not. Can they be reproduced within a tolerance that there is no imperceptible difference for any user? Yes, absolutely. And I mean, we can, within reason, come pretty darn close to that now. I think what is maybe a bit not confusing, but what consumers need to realize is that we're using kind of a limited set of tooling to make 357 different SKUs.
Okay.
Or
Yeah.
that's my responsibility is we have so many different lengths, weight categories. And so we need to have kind of an adaptable process so that we can meet the needs of the whole range of consumers. And this is not just a Matsu specific issue. This is all ski brands. We're all in the same boat trying to make 192 centimeter classic ski all the way from 40 kilos skier weight to 90 kilos skier weight. That's a big great. That'd be like tuning a bicycle mold, going in and bending a bicycle mold to
Right.
match different rider. Like the expectation for the ski industry is kind of on a different level. So that's kind of where the challenge is introduced is in the requirements to satisfy a wide range of consumers. And I think
Well, that and the fact that the skis are inherently dynamic. Like when you compare it to bikes, bikes are
very
basically a static object. You know,
they're
they've got
pseudostatic. Yeah,
some flexibility and damping
yeah,
variations, but fundamentally they're light and stiff.
yeah. Bicycles are loaded in pseudostatic manner, whereas skis are highly dynamic. You're dealing with very relatively high deformations and levels of strain, which bikes would just never see. And so it is a very different proposition in terms of money being no object. The skis could 100% be lighter. They could 100% be faster. My area of expertise is very much in materials, manufacturing, composites, camber, not necessarily chemistry, but I'm sure that there are things on the base side, like not the base is the base material, to speed that up, to optimize it even better for different snow conditions, which is another valid point as well. Snow is variable. So if you optimize for the ski stadium, that same optimized ski is not going to be the same optimized ski for the woods in any ski race. There's never.
Here's a problem we all confront all the time because everyone tests
Yes.
the stadium. You go to the World Cup and they're all gliding out in the stadium.
Yeah. So you're always trying to work on this kind of optimization problem and making compromises, and that process kind of becomes even bigger for races such as the ski classics, where it's much better to have a ski that's always okay than a ski that goes from great the first 30K to terrible to great. Like it doesn't matter then because you're already dropped by the league group or whatever.
So in your opinion, given the state of industry, the economics of ski sales and the necessity to make a ski at a certain price point in order to be able to sell it in the market, available materials and techniques, how close to topped out do you think we are? Should we expect meaningful advances in ski performance in the coming years, or do you think we're about there?
No, I mean, there's definitely performance to be gained. I don't know how quickly that will come, when the next glass fiber revolution will come. If you ask people in 1972 if they thought skis were as good as they'll ever be when they were racing all on wood skis, some of them had plastic bases and some of them were doing cool stuff like that. But the people probably didn't expect a whole new world of opportunities. And then was it Fallen in 74, spring of 74?
Maybe, yeah, whatever it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was Fallen 74. The first World Championships gold medal was won on glass fiber reinforced skis. And there
And the
was never
last
again.
on
Well,
wood.
the last one on wood.
Right. In the same championship, right?
Yeah. But after that World Champs, there was never again a World Champs gold medal won on wooden skis. That was it. It was just that, a sea change in the equipment. And for all I know, that could be happening in the base materials later. There's the Flora ban that has led a lot of people to start thinking about the problem of minimizing friction in a very different way. Maybe that will lead to something revolutionary in that space. Maybe it'll be the implementation of different molding methods. So in ski manufacturing, it's difficult to kind of hypothesize about what it would be. Of course, I can think of a number of different technologies that would improve the quality, immediately. You could go to a very F1 inspired design process where you're using, pre-preg materials. You could buy kind of adaptive molds, so you could programmatically change the camber. You could use autoclave curing so that you get very, very high compaction. You could, yeah, and there's a lot that can be done, but you very quickly get F1 prices, and there's a reason they only have 2 cars per team. So,
well, we'll wait for you to come up with something brilliant.
Yeah. Well, let's let the dust settle on this project, and then
I think these skis are pretty darn good. These are the ones that you sent me last spring, and we put them on the grinder, took them up to Lake Placid for JNs. Like they arrived literally, I think, the night before we had to leave. So I ground them, and I did have to comment that the LTD finish was atrocious.
Yep.
Well, we fixed that. They all went in the races up there. Like I waxed them a couple times. We put them on the snow against proven good skis, and they were all straight into races. This is junior nationals. This isn't the World Cup, but these are also just production skis that just got plucked out of the available inventory and shipped over DHL. So,
and there was not a lot of available inventory, I can assure you of that.
No, I know. And also you looked up the serial numbers for me, and you commented that the was it the 187 F2 ski was a little skewed forward, and it wasn't exactly what you would send, and yet it's really fast. And Luke Rizzi skied to a medal on that ski at JNs, and he had access to my entire fleet and testing all brands, which he had done all season long. So it wasn't like they beat out just scrub skis. It seems like the process has gone really well. I'm super excited to come visit at the beginning of next month and catch up at a little greater length, and also start to select some skis. thanks for your time today. And yeah, I think this should be a lot of fun to get these skis on the snow. Looking forward to it.
Always a pleasure, Zach.
All right, good. I'm going to hit stop.